Guys, what's going on? Welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I'm your host, Isaiah, and today we are going to work on our budget. um, Episodes back, I talked about, balancing your checkbook, right? Recognizing currency in relationships and investments and relationships that leave you in the negatives and all that. But now we're going to work on our budgeting because I think it's important to understand that how you are with currency will overall influence how you move through life in all aspects. So we're going to get into that. And I hope this helps actually because it was something that I was doing all week and it was necessary because it definitely gave me some perspective on a lot of things in terms of like where I've been spending and how I've been spending in more ways than one. So if you're home, chill, find a safe spot, get a piece of paper actually and a pen. You're gonna need it. And if you're driving, put on that damn seatbelt. Don't play with me. And yeah, just think about these things, okay? And by the end of this episode, you should have a better budget in terms of how you spend your life. All right? So stay tuned. Guys, what's going on? How are you? How you been? We got September, October. We got 3 months left of the year. 4. No pressure. um, if you could think about how this year has been for you, how would you describe it in like one word or one sentence? What has it been for you? I think for me, the word that comes up is recognition, right? Recognition of more than one thing, but overall, me, right? And I think so. There needs to be a healthy balance of awareness of others and accountability for yourself. And, when things transpire, things happen to us that are not in our control, is not so much that we are just kind of left to sit in the rubble of everything that transpired, but instead it's like, all right, well, what now, right? What happens now? How do I move on from this? And the funny thing is, overall, you have no choice. Like, action will happen. Even a moment of nothingness is still an active choice, right? Choosing to do nothing is still action. Sometimes the misconception is that like I have to always be doing something, and that's not the case, right? That's not the case because sometimes just being busy, quote unquote, doesn't really lead to any kind of productivity. That's why I don't really use the word busy in my vocabulary. When I talk to people, I don't really say, yeah, I've been busy, because it doesn't mean anything. To me, it doesn't. I don't subscribe to the whole busy because I just think it's a throwaway, right? It's like water is wet. You're busy, obviously. What are you busy with, right? And I never try to make myself seem more important than other people. And I think a lot of times when people use, oh, I've been busy, it's a way for them to kind of one deflect how they've operated, but also to make them seem more important than the other, right? So without being questioned, right? I've been busy is just like a universal law for fuck off. So for me, I don't use busy because is nothing. And I think, for this year, I've been occupied with a lot, but it all came back down to recognizing what I've been riddled and occupied with. Who, what, why, and what now? You get me? And I had a couple of hiccups, like a couple of conversations that haven't happened yet, but then there were other conversations where um, someone would like quote unquote call me out. And for me, perspective is interesting because the the place that it was coming from or how it was addressed voided the other party's responsibility, the other party's behavior leading up until this point that may have influenced our relationship. And instead of me trying to prove how busy I've been, I've just said, yeah, I've had a lot going on, but at the same time, your statement is very misguided. It's loaded. A lot of it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with me, and it's a misdirect. So with that, in that moment, I can kind of take a step back and recognize somebody's intentions, right? Are you looking for clarity or are you just looking for what you want? It's a big difference because sometimes clarity does not always mean it's what you want to hear or what you want. It's what you need, but it's a very big difference between that and someone just wanting what they want from you. And these days, I don't necessarily give of myself as much intentionally, but also just like, I think at this point in time, it's just not there. And I keep saying this, like, this is a season where I was like, I got to figure out my budget. I got to figure out what my budget looks like because I am trying to save up for just my sense of peace, right? um, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, and basically, I still need to have enough for my current relationships that are investments. Like I still need to invest into those places. So now I have to figure out a budget. So I posted a video that talked about the low maintenance friend, right? It was in the context of the low maintenance friend and basically how people have priorities, but priorities are organized choices. And then the concept of obligations. We may have obligations, but doesn't make them our priorities, right? So I sat down, and you should sit down and do this if you have. If you have a piece of paper and a pen, just think about this. Or if you're driving, I want when you get to a point where you can like just stop and think about this. I wrote down my list of priorities, right? I was like, where's my sheet? My health, my relationships, my finances, my career, this podcast, and even something practical in the day, like an audition, for an example. Those are my priorities. Then I wrote down my obligations, and it was like big things that I have to take care of. Those are my obligations. Have I been prioritizing all of them? No, not really. Why have I not been prioritizing them? Because it required a lot of energy and emotional awareness and attention that I'm not necessarily ready to give, right? Because some things that you have to occupy yourself with, they can be very taxing and draining, right? And there's a lot of factors that go into it, and it's just like fuck, this is a lot. So yeah, it's an obligation, but I have been prioritizing it. And then I looked at my choices, right? What choices have I been making, right? And choices to me are um, kind of like things that are semi important but not obligatory. These are things that I want to do, and I'm making them things that I have to do. Right? For one reason or another, they are a priority for me. Personally, Isaiah, they are my priority. So I was looking at that, and the list looks very interesting, but it's a way for me to budget, right? When it comes down to budgeting, even with money, right? Let's say I spend money on this thing. I have a budget. I have a budget for certain obligations and priorities, but I choose to spend money on something else that's not really as much of a priority, nor should it be. Me spending money on that thing is overall going to influence the stress I have later when it comes to me not having enough for what I've been budgeting for what I've been prioritizing, or what I should be prioritizing. It's an obligation, right? And now I don't have the amount that I should have because I made a choice to deviate from my budget, right? That doesn't just affect the moment when it comes for me to pay up. It also affects my level of frustration, me kicking myself potentially, me not being able to show up in other relationships because now I'm frustrated and now I'm beating up on myself and all these other things. So now that one choice I made to step outside of my budget has influenced everything else in my life. And now the stress that I have from this one moment is going to carry over into my other relationships, how I engage and how I interact, because now I don't have the energy. So emotionally, right, when we talk about budgeting, do you overspend in life? You know, and I'm not just talking about money, but how you spend your life, how you spend your time. Is it within your budget, or have you been overspending? Now, if you're a recovering people pleaser, for example, you always spend outside of your budget. You are bad with currency. You are horrible with currency. You haven't been taught how to budget in most cases, right? It's not really there. So you are just used to overspending, like, and always in the struggle, right? Always trying to figure out how you're going to make ends meet elsewhere. AKA, how are you going to show up for yourself? AKA, what is your view of yourself? Do you have a healthy view of yourself, or are you spent? Like, is it just not there? You get me? Um, Budgeting is not just about uh, money, but it is around currency, right? How you invest your time, your energy, all that matters in terms of your budget and your life budget, right? And the one, the most important thing I want you to understand is that we are no longer making a rainy day fund for people who are not invested in us. And the rainy day fund means that you will always have extra to give for people who haven't given much of anything. You see what I'm saying? You will always have much more to give in your rainy day fund because you have saved up for people who only come around when they need something from you, for example, right? You always have leftover to give them. And even if you don't have leftover, you give of yourself to the point that you no longer have what you need for yourself and other people, right? Boundaries. um, I want you to understand that, you know, self reliance is not self sustainable, right? Those are two very different things because being self reliant means that you have to do the work to keep yourself afloat, right? You have to do this work. So, being mindful of that space, you understand that, you know, everything requires some sort of maintenance and some sort of intention and attention from you or someone else, right? So get out of the mindset that being self reliant means you're self sustainable because eventually, when you burn out, who is there to take care of you? You can't even take care of yourself. And that was something I had to be mindful of in terms of like, what's my budget look like? Right. And I just said, I'm not really, I don't have the budget. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the energy. I just don't have I don't have it right now to be in spaces that don't really I'm not really invested in, right? And I'm never going to have that moving forward. Never going to have that. I'm never going to have enough to spend in places I don't want to be, right? I'm never going to have enough to cultivate relationships that I don't want to cultivate. Like, it's just never going to be there. It's not in my budget moving forward. And I like it like that. Why? Because it means I'm always going to have an overflow, or I'm always just going to be good in terms of currency for the relationships and the things that I need to have for. So when it comes to you overspending and recognizing your budget, I want you to pay attention to what your emotional budget looks like. I want you to pay attention to what your mental budget looks like. What do you keep puzzling yourself over that is not really important, right? But you keep investing your time into this, into people, whatever. Are you getting hung up on what people say about you, or like what they're accusing you of if it's not true, right? Stop trying to clear your name when it comes to a lot of things. First off, be real about who you are, right? I'm not saying walk through this world and be a dick. Obviously, that's never what Isaiah is going to recommend or say. But what I am saying is this, is if you're in a season where you feel like you keep having to prove yourself, or you're trying to clear your name with people, places, or things, fuck it. It's just not it, you know? It's just not it. So don't spend your time there, because there's no return in investment. Whatever somebody thinks of you is what they're going to think of you. And if they think it of you easily, that means that they already made up their mind a long time ago. You cannot necessarily change a person's mind, and that's not your job, right? Stop trying to prove to people how much you can do, be, without there being any reciprocation, right? Especially if they're seeking something from you. There's a difference between, I think, trying to prove yourself to somebody who is not seeking anything, right? Versus trying to prove yourself to somebody who keeps returning and using you, particularly, right? They get something from the work that you're doing. It's a big difference. Versus you just trying to get the attention of somebody. Like, even then, what are your intentions? You get me? What are your intentions? Like, all of this matters and is going to influence how you budget, right? And once you start working on your budget, even financially, it's going to require you to be a little bit more particular, right? One thing definitely influences another. And if you are not used to budgeting, or you haven't been taught how to be good with money, even, you won't be good with your energy as well, because one just influences the other. So consider that. Think about your budget, make a list of your priorities, your obligations, and your choices, and see what it looks like. And then I want you to kind of take heed and move from there. All right? That's all I got for you guys. Just something to think about, something quick and dirty. I might expound upon it next week if something else doesn't pop up, but that was a big one for me. What's my budget? And quite frankly, I don't have more to give. I'm staying within my budget because I need to invest in myself and invest in the places that are investing in me properly. All right. I hope you guys have an amazing week. I hope you guys are taking care of yourself and you're breathing new life into this fall season, because things are about to change in the best way possible. We just got to be the advocate, or the pioneer for the change that we seek and deserve. All right. If you like this podcast, leave a rating, leave a review. It goes a long way. It puts the podcast into the algorithm, and it just allows more people to listen. For my new listeners, welcome, guys. A few of you hit me up on TikTok and was like, hey, I started listening to the podcast. So I just want to say I appreciate you. Appreciate your ears and your heart being here, and I hope that you walk away with something new to add to your heart space. I still have coaching slots available. Shoot me an email at thebirdbrainpodcast@gmail.com with the subject headline coaching if you are looking to do some mental health coaching. We work through everything I'm talking about. These are things that we work through specifically. And we get a little bit, we roll our sleeves up, and we make some goals, we tackle them, and we become very aware and attentive of what we need and deserve and what we have been doing that we may not be aware of, right? The coloring book is still available. The journal, the e-journal, is still available. And I'm coming up on the year anniversary since I wrote and published my book, which means that it's time to write another one. So, yeah, if you want to become a patron or Apple Podcast subscriber, Flight Club, you become that. Perks, bonus content. I think I'm going to start doing live streams soon. Just been trying to figure out how that's going to work between Apple Podcast subscribers and the Patreon supporters, because it's available on Patreon, but for the Apple subscribers, I got to figure out a way to do a live stream with all of you guys. So that's going to be happening. And yeah, merch is available as well. And I think that's it. That's all the homework I got. So take care of yourselves, yeah? Take care of each other, and just really focus on what your budget looks like. All right, so you can have enough for the places that deserve it, especially yourself. Take flight, guys.